and welcome back to the Ashby Bridge, everyone. I'm Suzanne Plumley, and I'm being rejoined by Emily, who came a couple of weeks earlier for yoga, but now we're going to be looking at another standpoint. But before I go into that, with all the awesome aspects that are out in the world that are telling you what autism is and some of the traits, such as Paul Megalef in Australia, Samantha Stein in the Netherlands, Sarah Hendricks in the UK, Temple Grandin here in the US, as well as so many others that are telling you what the traits of autism are. The mission of the Ashby Bridge is for you to come to me, the torchbearer, because I've lived a lot of what you're experiencing. That's why I call myself a torchbearer. I don't know this from the books. I know all about what your challenges are by personal experiences, which is why I call it the torchbearer. Now, I haven't gone into society and been 100% successful. I've had to call on people such as Emily and all my other bridge builders that can guests that have come before her and all the ones that will come after her to get resources for myself. And I figured if these questions and these concerns were coming up for me, how many others of you have been challenged with the questions and the bombardment of information and often conflicting information on what's right? Because the world isn't made up of one truth. Everybody has an opinion, and everyone thinks their opinions are right. So, you know how to tell the difference between truth and opinion? If everyone believes the same thing, such as the sun rises in the east, that's a truth. Everyone will agree that that is the truth. However, the sun is yellow, the sun is gold, the sun is bright yellow, and now everyone has an opinion about what color the sun is. But we all still know it rises in the east. So that's how you tell the difference between a truth and an opinion. So hopefully with my guests, as you've come to see for the last year and a couple of months now, that they want to give you the best possible information based on their knowledge. Now, I won't sit here on my podcast and give you the information when I have perfectly wonderful guests that have that zone of expertise. And they can help you, one, to see that we can get along with wonderful people on both sides of the bridge. I like the fact that I can have wonderful conversations with neurotypicals, even though I'm neurodivergent, to show you that you can too. It's not a this and us or them. And we've learned that. It's in all of us together. That's why there's a bridge and not a ferry. It's to join the two worlds together so that you can see that you are just as welcome to go over the bridge as I am as other autistic individuals. And I hope you'll approach me so that we can help you to go over the bridge. Now, today, Emily's back to talk about how to put mindfulness and yoga together to create solutions for our gut health. And what is that word, Emily? And you can go ahead and reintroduce yourself to anyone who didn't wasn't able to join us for the last time.
So we're talking about Ayurveda, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a sister science to yoga. So I saw you all a little bit ago on the yoga, and I hope you got a chance to practice it and enjoy a few movements to help you feel good. We're going a little bit beyond that. So yoga does help mental, physical, emotional, and our spiritual connection. When we talk about our internal and our digestion, though, we turn to Ayurveda to help build habits and know what to do to help prevent issues in the gut. If we do have something going on, we want to heal it. We do still work with our doctor, so I do want to make sure we know that it works together. However, Ayurveda is just as old as yoga, over 5,000 years, and they're still practicing and training in India and training where those places people are able to pass down the knowledge and skills.
Wonderful. I like that explanation. Now, if someone is watching this and is very fascinated because they've been experiencing a lot of gas and bloating and everything, and they go to their doctor and they say, Ayurveda, how can they help a doctor that might not understand what it is? What is the best way for us to explain without stepping on their toes, per se, but yet helping them understand that they want to go natural? They want to solve the problem naturally. What are your recommendations to say to our physicians who might not understand Ayurveda?
Yeah, that's a great question. In order to communicate with your doctor, right, we do trust and recommend that their answers are accurate, right? They were trained and have knowledge. However, in Ayurveda, we're treating each individual. And so when we look at each individual, I might have, some done my first step at 6 months, and someone else might have done their first step at 1 year. And there's nothing wrong with that, but our experiences are different, and what's happening internally is different. So, Ayurveda really does look at the person, the experiences they have, what's going on in their life, and that's what makes it unique. Now, when you go to talk to your doctor, one of the processes that I've used is I've said, hey, I prefer holistic, and had that open conversation with my doctor. And I also tell them, I'm not sure. I need some answers about what's going on with my body. But here are the symptoms on the physical level, my mental level, my emotional level, because it all makes a difference in what we digest. And we can talk a little bit more about digestion here in a moment. But in what we digest, that is important. So describing what's going on with it's gurgling, or it feels warm, or it feels sharp, giving a little bit more so we can get that experience, but also asking, I would like a holistic answer. Here's something I want to look into. So if there are other alternatives than just taking a pill right away, if a person's able to do that, asking for that. So, for example, with inflammation, it may be good to say, am I allergic to turmeric? May I take that? Curcumin is a common prescribed medication, actually, and that's what's in turmeric. So in Ayurveda, we look at where does this occur in nature naturally, right? And then we can implement that rather than working through a prescription. Does that help?
It does. It definitely helps. I think the key word there is holistic, natural. If they make sure that they say those two words, that may get the physician off of the idea of I'm going to write you a script, or I'm going to send you to the local pharmacy to get the latest Metamucil fiber enhancement that may not help us. Now, my next question would be, I know that there are so many that want to prevent it versus some that are so far having major pains and major. At what point do you think that we can help them get back on track so that they're not having to say, "Oh, I'm at the end. I'm so far gone. I just want a solution." I mean, I guess the question more is there a point when we really need serious help, or is your process good for any point along the continuum to get them back on track?
So as we go through our experiences, we know the difference, for example, when we briefly touch some hot water or a hot stove versus accidentally forgetting, which I really hope people don't do, like actually forgetting that your hand's in hot water or on a hot stove, which causes a more severe burn. In Ayurveda, we would take the initial action to help support that and be able to help at whichever point. If something is like sharply wrong or there's internal bleeding, things like that, those are things that need care with more devices or tools than what we would be talking about, what we're eating, what we're ingesting. And digestion in Ayurveda is everything we're seeing, saying, hearing, and all our environments that we're in. And this helps us look at, if I walk into a busy store, how do I feel? Am I feeling tense? If I walk into the gym and I'm feeling confident, that's different than if I walk into the gym and I'm like, whoo, I don't know if I want to be here. Hopefully folks can relate to that, but as a way to check in onto those other things, and that helps us understand our digestion a little bit more and what happens from those experiences, what's going to truly work. In the case of someone who's maybe more severe, we do what we call panchakarma. Now, that would be something where we would go to an Ayurvedic resort or somewhere where there are Ayurvedic doctors, nutritionists, the whole group of people doing the support for a period of time. Typically, it's 5 days up to a few months, depending on what's going on with the person and how long they want to spend. And during that, a lot of the focus is on key things, herbs that are put into the body, key foods, and key practices, or those habits that you can practice a little bit easier when you're in a place that's the status of every day than it might be when you're at your house and you're like, ooh, that chocolate chip cookie looks great, right? But we know we don't have to eat it. It might be there for somebody else. So it removes some of the temptation and it prevents some of the other things. So at the differing levels, we would do different things along the way.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Are there any signs that people might feel, or any I don't want to say like a release of a liquid or something that might give us the idea that we're not at the preventative, we're more at the we gotta fix this stage? I mean, is someone secreting a lot more gas than they usually would? What are some signs that they might want to watch for if they're in the danger zone, let's just say?
Yeah, so Ayurveda is a daily practice. It's part of the ritual. So it is finding the foods or the things that help us live the way we want to and how we want to feel. So when our reactions are carefully created and peaceful rather than reactive, we find that pause between what happens in front of us and our response, we know we're in a pretty good state. If we eat something, so for example, if I put hot sauce on my tongue and I start to feel more energized and angry, I probably don't want to be eating hot sauce, right? And balance that out. And in the summer, we would feel that heat and that transfer of the reaction a little bit faster for the food. So I want to start with that. But if internally for what we might feel, so yeah, if we're seeing like blood in the stool and we're seeing blood coming up, those are definitely signs. So where hopefully you're already working with your doctor. And if you're feeling sharp pain or a dull pain for a very long period of time, those are times where it's probably good to talk to your doctor, because there might be something more going on where we can work together with Ayurveda, but it's probably going to take some work with the doctor as well to make sure we start balancing things out. Once things get good, then we can start to figure out, okay, how can we change to get to a more natural and holistic point of view? Ayurveda doesn't typically do surgery, things like that. That's left to the professionals.
Well, that's great. I mean, I wanted to get that out of the way because if people, and I know that there are a lot of us who might be already at that point, and I just wanted to get them out of the way to know that we need to really watch ourselves and know ourselves. All right, let's switch to the I'm feeling great, but I'm not on a continuous schedule. I'm not always home. What are some ways that we can stay in balance no matter where we are, no matter what food is being offered? Because, like, for instance, when you go to a parent's house, they don't have the same diet because they don't have the same information. I happen to know that quite personally right now. But anyway, how can we help our listeners understand that there is a way to put Ayurveda into their daily lives so that no matter where they are, they can stay on a good habit?
Yeah. So part of it all starts with, and the first thing that happens when I interact with someone is we have a call and we talk through what dosha are you? There's 3 doshas in Ayurveda, and a person has all 3 of those aspects in them. It can be at different variations or amounts. And so that's what we try to come up with to understand how do we come back to balance. And we're born with a certain amount. Each of the seasons has a different amount. And the best way to talk about this a little bit is I'd like to reference, if the seasons don't make sense, right, like a cold or a hot or a very wet experience, ages of our life where we shift through different phases too. When we're a baby, or if you look at a baby, you just feel this joy and this energy and this juiciness. I don't think that's the right word, but so don't hold me to that. But like a way of like feeling like they're full of life and moisture as we start to age. When we get a little bit older, into maybe our teens, 20s, early 30s, we're driven, right? We're active, we're out there doing a bunch of stuff and exciting. That's more of a time frame when we've got internal heat and energy, that we're putting energy out and flowing through that. And as we get older, our body starts to wear in different ways based on what's happened in our life, and we start to dry out. And so that's like the third phase. And so if you're going to connect to that, the early phase is kapha, the secondary phase is pitta, and the last phase is vata. And we have all of them in our body at all times, but they're at different levels. And those relate back to earth, air, wind, fire, and space.
Okay.
So each of those have a different amount in them, which is why it's balanced, because we need all of those to maintain a healthy, happy life and not have to worry about what vitamins and other things we're pulling in. So with that, things that are important are finding sunlight first thing in the morning, because that affects our melatonin. Our blood pressure changes. Yeah, it's beautiful. Our blood pressure changes throughout the day. It tends to actually to go up a little bit every time we eat, or like right before we eat. So it's good to have scheduled meals throughout the day and keep it regimented. That doesn't mean that fasting is a bad thing, but pick and keep it consistent in case somebody is like wants to do fasting. There are times when it is a good thing to do, but eating consistently is good. What was that?
I said, no, that's good to know. Very good.
Yeah. And so when we schedule our day, it's great to exercise in the morning. That's when we have the energy for the day. And so if we have a lot of energy then, it's easier to do, and it fuels our metabolism for the rest of the day, helps balance out all of our internal digestion and actually our hormones too. It has an effect there. So that's a good thing if a person can fit it in. Plus, why not do the exercise first? Just in case you run out of time later, you know you've done that for your overall health. As the day goes on, we want to start to relax the body. Early in the morning from 6 until 10 is our very creative time. From 10 until 2 is very active and where we can get things done. From 2 until 6 is a little bit more relaxed and we can get distracted easily. We think about different things. Those aren't bad things, right? Because if we're distracted, it means we're thinking about some different things and we might have some brand new ideas to pull in that are wonderful. Mm-hmm. So those are good times. After 6, it's again probably a good time to start winding down if you can, depending on what your schedule is. And then going to bed by 10 o'clock does wonders. So the body recovers different parts, and the organs are typically recovered at night while we sleep. Okay. So our heart, our liver, our pancreas, all of that is being cared for from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. until about 6 a.m. So if we're asleep for that period of time, we know when we're getting more than 7.5 hours, 8 hours of sleep, and we're letting our organs relax as it was designed for the circadian rhythm. It allows us to, when we see that sunlight in the morning, reset. Our hormones start working again in that way. Our hormones will know, our insulin, for example, will know when we're going to eat if we have a consistent schedule. And it allows all of that because our body is so smart. It is so smart and it can adapt to so many things. We know this through the adaptation of evolution, but we also know it because we've done so many things in our lives and had many, many experiences. And we all survive and thrive in so many different ways. So when we can do that, we allow our body to not have to worry so much. It does help to pre-cook some food if you need to. I do recommend that, especially if you're super active and good. If you can, eat it warm and put some loving energy into it when you're heating it up. That's always great, especially in the winter. Mm-hmm. In the summer, some cold food's not a bad thing. We do need some raw food, and I just mean, carrots, things that are good to eat raw to help maintain the body and the digestion or fiber. However, warm foods are good because we know it's warm internally and we're able to process that easier. Our body doesn't have to heat it up to process it. If you can cook at the house, for each of your meals, even better, because then you've got fresh, really, really intention, fresh food in front of you. And it can feel very heartwarming. It becomes somewhat of a ritual. And then all of the habits come together and make it easier just to be happy and live our lives in an easy way.
That sounds good. Yeah, I mean, it is a mindfulness and exercise to get us into the natural flow. And I like the word flow because we can tell right away when we're out of flow. What are some things that, and we know that is taking deeper breaths, going into some exercise motions to revive ourselves. When you're talking about the times of the day, it reminds me exactly of what I did today for work. Oh my gosh, I mean, from 9 to 11, I did have the energy. Then from 11 to 2, I started to find I was active, but I was starting to go. And then by the time 2 o'clock came, I'm like, okay, time for a new creativity because I was feeling. So I did what probably you shouldn't do, but just as I went to get a coffee. which is not always the best because, as you and I know, that's not good for our circadian rhythms to have coffee that late. What are some foods you might recommend to people who need a jump start to that are gut health happy? That let's just say they're commuting home, and to do exercise when they're commuting home might not be it, but maybe they need a snack. Is it nuts? Is it fruit? What do you recommend to go along with your practice so that they can revive themselves?
Yeah, so definitely food is an option to revive yourself. Now, the amount of energy in an apple is the same as a coffee. If you were to drink cold water, you're going to wake yourself up, right? If you think about putting even cold water on the hands when you're warm or splashing it on your face, those are ways to get the body awake a little bit more. One could also do breath of fire. So breathing faster for a short period of time, as long as that feels comfortable. So maybe test it out before you need it. But what happens then is our blood flow increases and our energy starts going up. So trying that if you need to take a ride home or drive back, that'll keep you up a little bit longer. In coffee, it's not a bad thing. Sometimes drinking potentially decaf, which still has about 15% caffeine or up to, could be a good option. Hot chocolate also has some caffeine. White tea has the least amount of caffeine, but there's a few other options that are going to be a little bit less strong so your body can process them and still go into that sleep mode when it needs to around 10 p.m.
Now that's interesting because I did have an apple at 2 o'clock, but then I found I still needed the other. So I was half good. I did have the apple that kept me going for another half an hour and a half, which I needed to have the strength to keep going. So yes, an apple would be good. I do find that's good. I think when we go into that warmth, and the breathing and the even as you say, going and putting some warm cold water on our face or drinking some water, that's going to be helpful too. What are some other things you'd recommend to people who are finding that they're on the go for 12 hours straight? How can they really realize how they can improve their health?
Add a couple more so the last question just for a moment too. A brisk walk is also really good because it gets the energy up. And if you can, maybe take 10 minutes and just meditate or relax. Because after we come back out of that relaxation, we can feel like whatever is going on that feels heavy or makes you sleepy might come right back. For those that are a little more busy and active throughout the day, maybe for their lunchtime or their breakfast, if they need to take it on the go, something liquid and something that still has a lot of nutrients in it. So getting your fruits and vegetables, it's important because otherwise the fiber that we need naturally doesn't necessarily move everything through. And those are helpful things for that. That would be an option. Have snacks. We do want to try and eat our biggest meal of the day around lunchtime. And when we do that, we give our body more time to digest. And then when we eat dinner, it's a little bit lighter, probably the lightest meal of the day if you can, which is not always our American practices. However, it is a good practice if a person can take that habit on. And 3 hours before bedtime. If 3 hours before bedtime isn't possible, we want it to be a little bit more protein at dinner just to help balance out and keep the body going and our metabolism going. Other things for on the go, making sure that you're getting lots of water and keeping that active, but also enough downtime to really balance it out. So your sleep, and your time of just being wherever you're at, family, friends, getting those amount of fun out is a lot more important. For example, I have a day of the week that I start at 5 a.m. and I don't end necessarily until 7:30 p.m. And so I've learned to rest, when I need to. But if I schedule and get my food in at the right times, that's always helpful. I have a little bit of rest that I can add in, and that allows me to have the energy to last the whole day.
Oh, that's good. Now, tell me, how can Ayurveda help you with maybe a negative environment that you're in? Is there a way that we can come back to center when we're not in the healthiest of environments? Because we talked about the commuting. What about when we're going into an environment where there's either a lot of sensory, particularly my autistic individuals, we're dealing with high masking because don't want to have the environment impact our day. But at the same time, we need to be aware of it. Is there a way that we can pull ourselves out of a negative or a toxic environment, even if we have to stay in it? How can we bring ourselves to mindfully come out of that, even though we're still have to be in it because it's a work situation? Let's just say.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things. So one, if it's a situation and a person feels like more is overload internally is happening, my point of view is that at any time, right, a person can say, hey, I need to go take a break. If someone's in a required work meeting or something where there's just a lot going on, having a few moments or saying, hey, I'm overwhelmed, I need to go, our fellow humans are going to help us out and allow us to do some of that. Many of us have soft hearts. We just have to let them show, right? And be vulnerable once in a while. If it's a situation where we know going into the environment that it's not the easiest to be in, that's where our health and our well-being and what we do is important. So maybe the night before we prepare and we tell ourselves and give some good positive affirmations before we go to bed, we get a good night's sleep, we eat well, because doing all of that keeps ourselves at a place where our fight or flight will take longer to kick in, depending on what the situation is, right? And the intensity of it. And it starts to build resilience, especially when we can start to train ourselves. Hey, I'm eating this healthy food. And so our body doesn't have to worry so much about detoxing or healing. It can focus on truly creating and experiencing once it knows and it gets into those habits and those routines. And then when we're required or might need to be in a situation that isn't as comfortable, and sometimes that can be not just work, but holidays. Somebody forgot the cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving, and going into the store, and the idea of going into the store on Thanksgiving Day, an hour before you're supposed to eat, there's a layer of stress and like discomfort that can come with that. So if we can work internally to say, hey, I'm calm, I'm okay, and we build that resilience, plus knowing that we're greater than any circumstance and condition, right? So we know that we're going to make it through, and we've gone through so many experiences before. Now, that's not specific to Ayurveda, but it is specific to knowing our spirit and who we truly are, and that's important.
Tell us a little bit more about Ayurveda as far as, does it take care of the whole system, or does it go to work on those parts of us that might be a little bit more troubled than others, such as, let's just say we have a history of kidney issues. Will it take care of the whole system and know how to balance itself, Ayurveda? Or is it something where it will go and take care of the parts of us that need the most attention? How does that work?
Yeah. So when we work with someone, wherever their dosha is imbalanced, that's where we're going to focus. So, for example, if it is the kidneys and there might be fear, there might be anger, or other things going on, we're going to want to balance that out with cooling foods, right? So, maybe more water is a great place to start. Some mint, things like that to help balance that out. Now, water and mint, both of them also have effects other places in the body, right? We need water throughout the whole body to keep it active. And mint will also soothe an upset stomach. So that's another, if you're going to go into an environment you're not sure about, drinking some mint water or taking it with you can be helpful. And it's going to soothe even like lower in the intestines. If there's IBS issues or polyps, things like that, it can be really helpful for that. So there are ways that it's going to look specific, but also focus. Our goal is to allow a person to live fully when we do go through Ayurveda. So we are looking at everything as a whole and all 5 elements in order to balance it out. If there's somewhere that needs to be focused on, we will. Typically, we start with the skin. If there's something going on in the skin, then we know that there's probably things going on deeper down, but we'll start there. And the last layer is more like our reproductive system. So if we've got underlying things going on there, we can help balance that out. But we would try and start with, okay, what's that balance of making sure the skin is happy and healthy? Okay, now let's go into the next layer, our tissues, and then we slowly make our way into the reproductive system. If the person comes in and they know they have a reproductive issue, or for example, cramping, menstrual issues for females, those would be things where we can suggest foods that might have balancing properties or herbal remedies that might also work for that. And for men, we have the same thing, right? If there's things where they're feeling like, their muscle building isn't working quite the same way, to help balance those things out.
That's great. Oh, perfect. Can you think of any myths that might be out there circulating around that we should ignore? Because I've heard so much information of different people who believe different things. Are there any myths that you can think of that we should just stay away from and know that it's not true? Going back to our idea of opinion. Can you think of any myths that are out there? That
I don't have any that I would say from an Ayurvedic perspective, or even from my own personal, are like specific, not true. There is the possibility of too much water. There's also the possibility of too little water. The best thing that I would say is really get to know yourself, know what works for you, and balance that out accordingly, because we are the ones who live every day in our body. And so we know what we're experiencing. And when we go to the doctor, or even when someone comes to me, sometimes we have a good idea of what the answer is, and it can come to our intuition too. For example, there was something I was looking up just because it came to mind mentally the other day. And I didn't get the chance to go through that full process of looking it up. But when I looked it up, I later was like, oh, I also had this thing going on and some pain in that area. So it helped me resolve that,
Oh, wow.
And
yeah.
I was still able to eat it before I looked up the final results. So we know there's some times where we just know what's good for our body. We might crave chocolate, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? Maybe we need the magnesium.
Oh,
We might
all
need
right.
the potassium from a banana. So our body is working with that. Now, if it's sugar and that's all a person wants, there's probably some imbalance going on in the gut and something worth thinking about, because we want to make sure we're getting all of our balance of fruits, vegetables, proteins.
Now, I've heard that some people swear that you should not drink cold water. You should always stay with room temperature. Is that something that is based on your study of Ayurveda because we want the warmth in it? Is that where that comes from?
It is. So when we put cold water in, yes, it might wake you up, but it can also affect the bacteria in the body. So if we're putting bacteria, if you remember from your days in school and under the petri dish that everybody had, it started to grow mold or something like that, right? When you put it in the really hot environment, it grew faster. And when you put it in the cold environment, it grew slower. So if we were to drink more cold water, the bacteria that like that are going to grow, and the bacteria that don't like it are going to slow. It's the same thing with the idea of when you eat more sugar, the bacteria that like that are going to grow, and the bacteria that don't like it are going to slow down. And that's why it becomes difficult to stop eating as much sugar or other things for people.
Right, right. Now, I've heard a lot of good things about, um, and this may be off topic, so forgive me if I'm not going in the right direction. I've heard that dark chocolate is actually an excellent way to fulfill that sweet without going in the wrong direction. So, I mean, I've heard I happen I happen to love dark chocolate, and I'm like, oh, when I eat it, I'm getting the sweet craving without the what is it that's in the dark that is better than any other kind, the milk chocolate, let's just say, that would fulfill our sweet tooth without it being so detrimental.
Yeah. So the dark chocolate has less sugar, making it milk or white. White is typically the most sugar. That doesn't mean that they're bad, but the dark chocolate has less sugar. And the more of the dark chocolate we can have, the higher percentage, the less sugar we're taking in that's not natural. Because if it's that added sugar, it's going to taste different.
It sounds like that could be a good treat for the unhealthy environments to allow ourselves to have a little dark chocolate to shift our mindset to get back in line because we know that I know for me 3 o'clock is my bewitching hour. That's when I want the sweet. But maybe for all of our listeners, if you're in that difficult situation, maybe having a dark chocolate pretzel. That's what I love to do is get not even a candy, but maybe a pretzel to fulfill that sweet and sour, sweet and salty, which you only don't eat as much as if you eat a whole bag of M&Ms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just enough to get you back to where you can start the practices of Ayurveda going forward instead of waiting until you're crashed and then trying to put it into the system. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with dark chocolate. It actually balances out the vata of the body because when we, in moderation, let me add, right? If we eat the whole bag of all the Dove chocolates, we have a different thing going on. But when we get into more of that dry season or the vata, that chocolate actually is relatively moist as it melts in our mouth. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. Plus, the magnesium is good. And if we can let that chocolate feel fulfilling and enjoyable in our mind, we will feel some relief. And it's so much easier then to go back to something and say, okay, I got this. If we know that there's still some sort of sweetness in life, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I would say definitely you can just shift that challenging point so we can get our way back to being right on. And yeah, portion control is definite. I would like to take just one or two Dove chocolates and not the whole bag with me. Just one or two for emergency cases. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to allow myself because I'm always one for giving myself grace. I'm not going to, like today, for dessert, my mom had offered me the red velvet cupcake, and I said, no, that's not quite it. But I mean, let's just go to another stressful situation earlier in the day. Maybe that one or two pieces of dark chocolate are just enough to reset our mind so we can get back on track. What else can you tell us about Ayurveda that you'd love us to know?
So there are some other things. There are a few key herbs that we might already find in our diet or lifestyle or foods. So onions, for example, are good. They're good for the heart, but they're also good for releasing and relaxing a little bit in the body for antioxidants.
Is it any color onion, or is it red, or is it the white, or Vidalia, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Any of them have a little bit, but they do have different amounts within them. Hibiscus is really good for the heart. Beets can be good for the heart. Cinnamon is good for the heart. Cinnamon is also good for helping maintain insulin, which is great to know, right? Raspberry tea, if someone wants to be pretty natural, they can use that during their moon cycle or their menstrual cycle, and that's very helpful. Apples are good for the liver, good for the kidneys, very important for those things. Pumpkin seeds are a great protein and snack at any point, right? It's a little bit easier. They're soft, they're not super hard and crunchy like some other nuts. So that's a good one to eat. It's high in protein. So we're going to have more energy out of that. All of those are good. For the kidneys, we want to focus on warmth and water and make sure those are good. I'm checking my notes a little bit too, just to make sure I'm good.
Now, let me just ask you while you're talking about that. I know, for me personally, but there may be others who are challenged with added weight, and I'm hearing that our liver is a big part of that, or the gallbladder. How can we use Ayurveda or any practice within it to really reduce our a toxic liver? And I'm not talking alcohol. I'm just saying. I was listening to a thing last night where sometimes the bile can get sticky, and I'm listening to this doctor, and I'm like, is he for real? Is this something I should be worrying about? Is he just trying to sell a product? I think that's what a lot of us get into problems is we see a guy with a white coat on and he's talking about something, and we're like, I used to be very susceptible, and I'm sure there are a lot of other of my listeners that would be like, white coat, doctor, he must know what he's talking about. When in fact, because Ayurveda is holistic, I now am like, is this true or is this not? What parts can I accept and what parts can be naturally healed without even taking whatever he's trying to sell?
Yeah, I think there's a difference. So it really depends on what it is. So I don't have an exact answer because the root cause or causes of something that's dis-ease in the body, not necessarily disease, but dis-ease, discomfort in the body, it does take some of those personal experiences on an individual level for what might work. Now, apples are great, so they're going to help with the liver health no matter what. And if it's fatty liver or other things, fiber is good, and vegetables or however a person can get that, because that's going to help remove that. For losing weight and other things, it does take effort, right? Part of it is what we eat and being cognizant and aware, noticing what we're eating and being aware of that. And then the other part is the movement and the exercise too. And that's going to help in both cases. If it's stagnant, that would be something where we would talk through it for what might be best, whether it's an herbal remedy that's still natural and based on fruit, but it's just in a certain package format, or if it's something different where we talk about a lifestyle change,
Definitely. Now, for all my listeners, you know that you can watch this all over again on YouTube because there's a lot of information here. There's also the Ask Me Bridge Facebook group page. If you have any additional questions for Emily, be sure to check out her part on the page and go and ask her any questions, and she might be able to give you a little bit more information. Emily, how can they best get a hold of you so that if they, in addition to the Facebook group page, so that maybe they want to start a practice with you?
So my email is a great way if that works. And I can put that in there on the page under the post as well, if that's helpful. So that way everybody can see it. You're welcome to post in the group. And I do have my webpage set up in case someone wants to go, and my phone number and everything there too. So normally we have a consultation first and we really talk about what's going on. And then we build the lifestyle from there about what works. And that's where we might talk about movement or, doing different activities to help with that, as well as what we're ingesting and eating.
That's good. Now, normally I don't have too many of my guests give their information, but because gut health is such an important part of the autistic lifestyle, it's the area that we have the most challenges. I think it's very good to be connected with Emily, who does know more about the holistic side of it. So you're not going right to your doctor and having him say Metamucil or take this product, or I'm writing you a script. Sometimes it's just nice to have someone you can count on to give you the better holistic answers, because I hate to see any of us be put onto a prescription that's not right for us. And even if Emily says, well, you might be able to try this or that, anytime you can go natural, I always think is a better route than going to the pharmacist and getting something that may or may not work, and it will cost you a lot of money. Let's not put your money there. If you're going to put your money anywhere, into coaching, into working with Emily, into working with myself. I know that you're very stressed often on your income levels, but less if you have a problem. Let's not ignore it. And it sounds to me like between Emily's Ayurveda, yoga, the movement, this whole 3 months is all about making you the most healthy you without costing you so much money. There's better spent somewhere else. Emily, what else would you like to add as final notes to our podcast here?
Thank you so much for being here. And we know that gratitude is important. So I hope you all found this informative and helped you find something that lights you up within and really feel better with your day-to-day in your lives. Thank you for having me too, Suzanne, and your own examples. Way to be a great example for others. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, Emily. I'm so thrilled that you came back again to the Ask Me Bridge. And for all my listeners, she is definitely someone on the bridge that you can get a lot of great information from. And next week, we'll have our last week of our health. And then we're going to switch over to the mindfulness on the other side of image and all of that. First with Renee Crane and some of the other issues that come up with image that may be troubling you. But I wanted to make sure that we get all the health put together so you'd have a great bit of information so that when you go into image, you're feeling your best inside so that you can feel your best on the outside. And for now, I want to say thank you very much to Emily for being my guest for the second time. Thank you for coming and listening to the Ask Me Bridge information. I'm hoping that these resources, since the beginning of 2024, are there to help you. We didn't get a lot of resources, especially those of us who are late diagnosed. We didn't get any resources. So by putting on this podcast, it's you start taking the resources that really matter, and what better than to have great health and mindful health, right, Emily?
Yes, definitely. Conscious health. Yes.
Perfect. Well, I want to say goodbye to everybody for this week, and I will see you next week.